December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns. America declares war on the Axis powers. President Roosevelt calls it a date which will live in infamy. American factories mobilize for total war. Workers flood assembly lines, building tanks, planes, ships to fight fascism. But here's what they don't tell you in the history books. While American soldiers were dying on the beaches of Normandy, some of America's biggest corporations were still doing business with Nazi Germany. Not secretly, not by accident, with full knowledge of their board of directors, making billions while the Holocaust burned. I'm talking about household names, companies you buy from today: Ford, General Motors, IBM, Chase Bank, Standard Oil. They didn't just trade with Hitler before the war, they armed him, funded him, gave him the technology to invade Europe. And some of them kept the cash flowing even after American boys started coming home in body bags. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why your history teacher never mentioned this, why these corporations faced almost zero consequences, and why the exact same pattern is happening right now with different countries, different products, but the same blood-soaked profit motive. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented fact. Congressional testimony, declassified documents, court records, and it's time someone said it out loud. Let's go back to where it all began. 1933. Hitler takes power. Germany is destroyed, not figuratively, literally, economically annihilated. The Treaty of Versailles demanded 132 billion gold marks in reparations. That's roughly $442 billion in today's money. The industrial capacity was dismantled, the Rhineland occupied, the military restricted to 100,000 men. Then came hyperinflation. In 1923, a loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. People carried wheelbarrows of cash to buy groceries. Life savings evaporated overnight. By 1933, unemployment hit 6 million, nearly 30% of the workforce. The Weimar Republic was a failed state. Germans were starving, humiliated, desperate. Enter Adolf Hitler with a simple promise: make Germany great again. But here's what no one tells you. You don't rebuild a shattered nation on speeches and swastikas. You need steel, oil, rubber, aircraft engines, tank treads, radio equipment, chemical plants, and most importantly, you need capital, mountains and mountains of capital. Germany in 1933 had none of these things. The treasury was empty. The industrial base was crippled. So where did it all come from? The answer is as American as apple pie and just as uncomfortable. Rewind to 1924. American banks are flush with cash from the Roaring '20s boom. They're lending to everyone, and especially to Germany, because even though Germany is flat broke and owes billions in war reparations, American bankers see opportunity. The Dawes Plan, orchestrated by Charles Dawes, an American banker who'd later win the Nobel Peace Prize for this, restructured German debt. It was led by J.P. Morgan & Co., Dillon Read & Co., and Chase National Bank. They floated bonds, restructured payments, made Germany dependent on American capital. Between 1924 and 1931, over $475 million flowed from U.S. banks into Germany. That's approximately $8.3 billion in today's dollars. This wasn't charity. These were loans with interest and with strings attached. American bankers literally sat on committees managing Germany's economy. They controlled fiscal policy. They approved budgets. When Hitler seized power in 1933, he inherited this entire financial architecture. And here's the kicker. American banks didn't pull out. They didn't freeze assets. They didn't sound alarms. They doubled down. Why? Because Hitler promised stability. He promised order. He promised to pay back the loans. And Wall Street doesn't care about your politics if your credit's good. The oil that fueled the Blitzkrieg. Here's a question they never ask in history class. How did Germany fight a mechanized war without oil? Germany is landlocked, no oil fields, no colonies in the Middle East, no access to petroleum reserves. Yet the Luftwaffe flew thousands of bombing runs, panzer tanks rolled across Poland, France, and deep into Russia. The Kriegsmarine operated submarines across the Atlantic. All of that requires fuel, oceans of it. The answer? Standard Oil of New Jersey, owned by the Rockefeller family. In the 1920s, Standard Oil entered a partnership with IG Farben, Germany's largest chemical conglomerate. IG Farben was a monster. They produced everything from pharmaceuticals to explosives, and later they'd produce Zyklon B, the gas used in Auschwitz. But the most valuable thing IG Farben had was a process called coal hydrogenation, turning Germany's abundant coal into synthetic petroleum. The technology was revolutionary, and Standard Oil wanted it. So they made a deal: joint ventures, technology sharing, patent exchanges. Standard Oil gave IG Farben $20 million and access to American petroleum technology. In return, they got a share of the synthetic fuel patents. By the time war broke out, Germany was producing over 6.5 million tons of synthetic fuel annually. Without it, the Wehrmacht runs out of gas in 6 months. The Blitzkrieg never happens. Operation Barbarossa stalls. The entire Nazi war machine grinds to a halt. Standard Oil executives knew exactly what they were selling. They had representatives in Germany. They received reports. They attended Nazi industry conferences. And they kept the partnership running through 1939, through 1940, even into 1941. It took a U.S. government antitrust lawsuit to finally sever the connection. Let that sink in for a moment. The company that became ExxonMobil gave Hitler the technology to fuel World War II. If this is already making you angry, we're just getting started. This story goes deeper than you think, and it doesn't end in 1945. It's happening right now with companies you give money to every single day. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what I'm about to show you next will change how you see every brand logo you pass. And drop a comment. Which modern corporation do you think is playing the same game today? Let's see if you can guess before I reveal it later. International business machines. Today, they're a tech giant. In the 1930s, they were a data processing company specializing in punch card tabulation systems. And they customized those systems for Nazi Germany. Here's how it worked. Every concentration camp had an IBM Hollerith machine. These weren't just counting prisoners, they were organizing genocide. Prisoner registration, transport schedules, work assignments, cause of death classifications, medical experiments, genealogy tracking to identify Jews. The system was so efficient that the Nazis could process thousands of people per day. Arrivals, labor exploitation, extermination, all tracked on IBM punch cards with tidy little holes representing human lives. IBM's German subsidiary Deutsche Hollerith Maschinen Gesellschaft, or DOMAG, leased the machines, supplied the cards, and sent technicians to maintain the equipment. Throughout the entire war, the machines broke down, IBM sent repairmen. Cards ran out, IBM shipped more. And IBM's headquarters in New York? They collected royalties. Every lease payment, every box of cards sold. The profits flowed back to Thomas Watson, IBM's CEO, who'd been awarded the Merit Cross of the German Eagle by Hitler himself in 1937. After the war, investigative journalist Edwin Black uncovered internal documents, memos discussing special operations, contracts specifying prisoner statistics management, correspondence between IBM New York and Domag throughout 1943 and 1944. IBM claimed they lost control of their German subsidiary when war broke out, but the documents proved otherwise. Watson maintained contact, approved decisions, and most damningly, IBM reclaimed full control of Domag immediately after Germany's surrender and resumed operations without missing a beat. They didn't pull triggers, they just made mass murder efficient, industrial, and scalable. And after the war, no prosecution, no seizure of assets, no executive went to trial. Ford was more than just an automaker. He was a passionate anti-Semite who used his fortune to spread hatred. In 1920, Ford bought a newspaper called the Dearborn Independent. For 7 years, it published viciously anti-Semitic articles blaming Jews for communism, banking conspiracies, moral decay, and World War I itself. Ford compiled these articles into a 4-volume book called The International Jew, which was translated into German and distributed across Europe. Adolf Hitler kept Ford's portrait in his office. In Mein Kampf, Hitler praised Ford as an inspiration. In 1938, Ford received the Grand Cross of the German Eagle, the highest honor Nazi Germany gave to foreigners. But the admiration wasn't just symbolic. Ford's German subsidiary, Fordwerke in Cologne, didn't shut down when war started. It expanded. By 1941, Fordwerke was producing trucks, engines, and parts for the Wehrmacht. They made 78,000 trucks for Germany's military. 30% of the vehicles that rolled into France were built by Ford. And the labor? Slave labor. Prisoners from Buchenwald were forced to work in Fordwerke factories, underfed, beaten, worked until they collapsed, then replaced. Here's the most insane part. After the war, Ford sued the U.S. government. Why? Because Allied bombers had damaged his German factories. He wanted American taxpayers to compensate him for destroying plants that built Nazi war machines. The audacity is staggering, but it worked. Ford received settlements, no punishment, no accountability.
General Motors' German subsidiary, Opel, was even worse. By 1939, Opel was the largest automaker in Germany, producing 50% of all trucks and 35% of all armored vehicles used by the Wehrmacht. The Opel Blitz truck became the backbone of German military logistics. It carried troops, ammunition, and supplies. It transported Jews to concentration camps. Without GM, the Blitzkrieg doesn't happen. The invasion of Poland stalls. France holds. The Holocaust can't scale to industrial efficiency. GM executives knew. They maintained oversight. They appointed managers. After Pearl Harbor, GM publicly claimed they'd lost control of Opel due to the war. But internal documents revealed something different. Secret communications, financial transfers through neutral Switzerland, dividends paid from Opel's profits directly to GM's Detroit headquarters. After the war, GM demanded $33 million in compensation from the U.S. government for bomb damage to Opel factories, and they won. They got paid. American taxpayers compensated GM for destroying factories that armed America's enemies. Chase Bank, profiting from plunder. Chase National Bank, now J.P. Morgan Chase, operated in Nazi-occupied Paris throughout the war. In 1940, after Germany conquered France, the Chase's Paris branch didn't close, it stayed open, and it helped the Nazis. Jewish families trying to flee had their accounts frozen. The bank liquidated Jewish assets under Nazi supervision. They processed transactions, stripping wealth from families being loaded onto trains to Auschwitz. Chase claimed they had no choice, they were operating under occupation.
But documents uncovered in the 1990s told a different story. Executives in New York received detailed reports. They knew exactly what was happening, and they made a calculated decision: keep the branch open because it was profitable. Chase operated in Nazi-occupied France until 1944, 3 full years after the U.S. entered the war. An American bank helping Nazis steal from Jews while American soldiers were dying to liberate Europe. Let's talk numbers, because the scale is almost incomprehensible. IG Farben alone used over 83,000 slave laborers from Auschwitz, working them to death, producing synthetic rubber and fuel for Germany's war machine. IBM's machines tracked every single one. Ford Werke and Opel together built over 100,000 military vehicles, more than a third of Germany's entire motorized fleet. DuPont sold Germany the chemical precursors for explosives. ITT Corporation provided communication systems for German forces, including the V-2 rocket program. Without American steel, oil technology, vehicles, data systems, and capital, Nazi Germany doesn't invade Poland, doesn't conquer France, doesn't implement the final solution at industrial scale. The Holocaust required efficiency. American corporations provided it for profit. So what happened after the war? Nothing. Almost nothing. There were the Nuremberg trials. 24 top Nazis were prosecuted. 12 were executed. But the industrialists' trials? The Krupp and IG Farben executives got light sentences. Some served just a few years. Many were released early and returned to corporate leadership. And the American companies? Protected. Why? Because the U.S. government needed them. Post-war reconstruction required industrial capacity. The Marshall Plan needed factories. The Cold War needed manufacturing output and technological expertise. So Ford got defense contracts, GM got reconstruction deals, IBM got government computing contracts, Chase financed the rebuilding of Europe, Standard Oil kept drilling. The files were sealed, classified, buried under national security. It took 50 years for the full story to emerge. In the 1990s, class action lawsuits by Holocaust survivors forced document disclosures, letters, memos, contracts, all proving that executives knew, approved, and profited. The settlements? Pathetic. In 2000, a coalition of German companies created a $5 billion fund for slave laborers. Ford and GM contributed $20 million combined, pocket change compared to their wartime profits. IBM paid nothing publicly, settling privately with no admission of guilt.
Here's the part that should terrify you. This wasn't a historical aberration, it's the pattern. It's happening right now. China and forced labor. Apple, Nike, Tesla, Amazon, all manufacturing in Xinjiang, where over 1 million eager Muslims are detained in concentration camps. The U.S. State Department officially calls it genocide. And American corporations? They lobby against sanctions. They argue supply chains are too complex. They claim they can't verify labor practices. It's the exact same script. In the 1930s, we can't control foreign subsidiaries. Today, supply chains are too complex. Different words, same excuse, same profit motive. Apple made $383 billion in revenue last year. A significant portion comes from Chinese manufacturing using documented forced labor, and they fight every regulation that might disrupt it. Tech and surveillance states. Google developed Project Dragonfly, a censored search engine for China that would have hidden Tiananmen Square, blocked human rights information, and reported dissidents to the government. They canceled it after employee protests, but only after getting caught. Facebook's algorithms were used to organize genocide in Myanmar. The Rohingya massacre killed over 25,000 people, coordinated through Facebook posts and viral hate speech.
Facebook apologized, promised better moderation, but stayed operational, because leaving means losing users and ad revenue. Cisco built the Great Firewall of China. Oracle sells database software used to track political dissidents. Microsoft operates data centers for authoritarian regimes. Oil and arms. Exxon, Chevron, and BP do business with Saudi Arabia despite the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, despite Yemen being bombed into famine with American weapons, despite systemic human rights abuses. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman sell weapons to dictatorships, then act surprised when those weapons are used for atrocities. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. Corporations don't have morals, they have shareholders. Shareholders want returns, quarterly earnings, stock price growth. If doing business with a genocidal regime is legal and profitable, they'll do it, every time. The executives will justify it. We're creating jobs. We can't compete if we don't. It's complicated. And they'll donate to museums, fund hospitals, sponsor schools, polish the public image while the dirty money flows quietly in the background. You can build hospitals with one hand and gas chambers with the other. As long as the hospital is visible and the gas chamber is hidden, history remembers you as a hero. What you can do. First, understand this. World War II wasn't just won or lost on battlefields, it was financed. Without Wall Street, Hitler doesn't rebuild. Without Ford and GM, the Wehrmacht doesn't roll. Without IBM, the Holocaust isn't industrialized. Second, accountability is a myth. Most executives died rich. Most companies paid pennies in settlements decades later, and they're still operating, still profiting. Third, watch where your money goes. That iPhone was likely assembled by Uyghurs in camps. Those Nikes? Same. Your dollars fund this, not intentionally, but they do. And corporations count on you not caring enough to change. Fourth, this isn't conspiracy, it's documented. Congressional investigations, lawsuits, declassified files, it's public record. But it's not taught, not discussed, because the companies involved still have power, still lobby, still control the narrative. If this video made you curious, if you're realizing your history class left out the most important chapter, good, because this story doesn't end in 1945. It repeats. Different countries, different products, same profit motive, same excuses. So here's what I need you to do. Smash that like button if you're done with sanitized history. Subscribe because I'm not stopping here. We've got more stories they don't want you to know. Share this with someone who still thinks corporations care about anything other than profit. And comment below, which modern company do you think is playing this game right now? Because I guarantee you're funding something you'd hate if you knew the full truth. The same families that profited from Hitler, they're still running the world. Different names, same bloodlines, same playbook. We just stopped paying attention. Thanks for watching. Stay skeptical. History isn't over.